Arrogant mistress slaps pregnant wife while husband laughs unaware the man watching in the back is her billionaire father who owns the company employing them both. What happened next left them jobless and begging. The arrogant mistress's hand was already in motion when Hannah saw it coming. The slap hit her face so hard her head snapped to the side, the sound cracking through the marble lobby like a whip. Hannah's hand flew to her burning cheek. Her eyes squeezed shut in shock and pain, her other hand instinctively cradling her 7-month pregnant belly. But the slap wasn't the worst part. The worst part was her husband standing right beside the arrogant mistress. His mouth open wide with laughter, cruel, triumphant laughter that echoed off the walls while his pregnant wife stood there humiliated in front of everyone. Mark laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. His body language relaxed, comfortable, like watching his mistress assault. His pregnant wife was entertainment. Lena, the arrogant mistress in her tight black dress and designer bag, stood there with her hands still raised, her face cold and satisfied, marking her territory, claiming her victory. But neither the arrogant mistress nor the laughing husband noticed the distinguished older man in the expensive suit and glasses standing in the background watching everything. His silver hair perfectly groomed, his expression carved from stone in fury, his hands clenched at his sides. Richard Bradford, billionaire CEO, owner of Bradford Industries, the company employing them both, and the father of the pregnant wife they just destroyed. Hannah's knees felt weak. The marble floor beneath her feet seemed to tilt and spin. Her cheek burned like fire. But worse than the physical pain was the humiliation spreading through her chest like poison. She could feel eyes on her coworkers stopping mid-con conversation. Security guards frozen in place. Visitors staring with their phones already out recording. This moment would be everywhere by tonight. Her shame would be viral by morning. And Mark just kept laughing. His hand was on Lena's waist now, pulling her closer like he was proud of what she'd done, like Hannah deserved it. Hannah opened her eyes and looked at the man she'd married 4 years ago. The man she'd loved so completely she'd hidden who she really was just so he could feel like he was enough. She'd worked under her mother's maiden name, Hannah Sterling, instead of Hannah Bradford taking a mid-level job as a financial analyst, even though she had an MBA from Harvard and could have walked into any executive position she wanted. She'd driven a Toyota instead of the Mercedes her father offered. She'd worn clothes from normal stores instead of the designers who knew her family by name. She'd lived in a modest apartment, and pretended her bonuses were lucky breaks instead of strategic investments. All of it so Mark wouldn't feel small, so he wouldn't feel like he was marrying money instead of her. But he'd felt small anyway. She could see it now in his eyes. That deep, rotting insecurity that no amount of her sacrifice could ever fill. He needed to feel big. And the only way he knew how to feel big was to make her small. Lena pressed herself against him. Her red lipstick smile wide and vicious. She was beautiful in that sharp, dangerous way. All angles and calculation. Her black dress probably cost more than Hannah's entire wardrobe. Or at least that's what Lena thought. She didn't know Hannah could buy that dress 1,000 times over without checking the price. Nobody knew. That was the point. Hannah had wanted to be loved for herself, not for her father's billions. She'd wanted someone to choose her because of who she was, not what she could give them. And Mark had chosen her. He'd gotten down on one knee in that little Italian restaurant and promised to love her forever. He'd cried when she said yes. He'd held her like she was precious. But somewhere along the way, love had turned to resentment. Her pregnancy had made it worse. The moment she told him about the baby, something in his eyes had shifted. Instead of joy, she'd seen panic. Instead of excitement, she'd seen trap. He'd started working late. Coming home smelling like perfume that wasn't hers, making excuses that got lazier and lazier until he stopped making excuses at all. Hannah had known about Lena for months. She'd seen the text messages Mark forgot to delete. She noticed the way Lena looked at him in the office cafeteria. She'd even walked past Lena's apartment one night and seen Mark's car parked outside, but she'd stayed quiet. She told herself it was a phase. That he was scared about becoming a father. That if she just loved him harder, supported him better, gave him space to figure things out, he'd come back to her. She'd been wrong. Mark's laughter finally died down. And he looked at Hannah with something that might have been pity or might have been contempt. It was hard to tell the difference anymore. "You should watch where you're going," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Always bumping into people causing problems." Hannah's throat tightened. "I didn't bump into anyone, Mark. I was just— Don't argue with me." He cut her off, his voice sharp. "You're always arguing, always thinking you know better than everyone else. Maybe that's why nobody at this company respects you." The words hit harder than Lena's hand, because they weren't true. But Mark believed they were true, and that belief had poisoned everything between them. Hannah felt tears burning behind her eyes. But she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of these people. Not in front of Lena, who was watching her with that satisfied smile like she'd just won a war. But then Hannah's eyes found her father across the lobby. Richard Bradford stood perfectly still, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. His hands were fists at his sides. His eyes, usually warm and kind when he looked at her, were cold as January ice. He'd seen everything. The slap, the laughter, the humiliation, and Hannah knew her father well enough to know what that expression meant. Someone was about to pay. Richard had built his empire from nothing. He'd started as a construction worker, putting himself through night school, making connections, taking risks that terrified him, but pursuing them anyway. He'd lost everything twice before he finally succeeded. And when he succeeded, he'd done it with one principle he never broke. Protect the people you love and destroy anyone who hurts them. Hannah shook her head slightly. A tiny movement, a silent message. Not yet. Let me handle this first. Her father's expression didn't change. But she saw the slight nod, the understanding passing between them. He would wait, but he wouldn't wait long. Lena leaned closer to Mark, her voice loud enough for Hannah to hear. "I told you she's pathetic. Look at her, just standing there like a victim. No wonder you needed a real woman." Mark didn't disagree. He just smiled and kissed Lena's cheek right there in front of his pregnant wife, in front of everyone. And that was the moment Hannah stopped loving him. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a big realization with thunder and lightning. It was quiet, simple, like a door closing softly. The love just drained out of her, leaving behind something colder, something clearer. She straightened her spine, wiped the single tear that had escaped down her cheek, and looked at Lena directly. "You think you won something," Hannah said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "But you have no idea what you just did." Lena laughed, sharp and mocking. "What I did, I took what was mine. Your husband came to me because you're boring, you're plain, you're nothing special, and now everyone knows it." Hannah felt the baby kick inside her, strong and insistent, like her daughter was already fighting back. She placed both hands on her belly, protective, grounding. "You're right about one thing," Hannah said quietly. "Everyone will know. By tomorrow, everyone will know exactly what happened here." Lena's smile faltered slightly, just for a second, like she'd heard something dangerous in Hannah's tone, but couldn't quite identify what. Mark stepped forward, his face wreathing. "Are you threatening us?" That's rich coming from someone who can barely afford Mark. The voice came from behind them, deep and commanding, cutting through Mark's words like a knife through paper. Richard Bradford stepped forward, and the entire lobby seemed to hold its breath. He was tall, imposing, his presence filling the space in a way that made everyone instinctively step back. His suit probably cost more than Mark made in 6 months. His watch was worth more than Lena's car. But it wasn't the money that made people move. It was the authority, the power, the absolute certainty that this man controlled everything in this building, including their futures. Mark's face went pale. He'd never met the CEO before. Nobody at his level ever did, but everyone knew what Richard Bradford looked like. His face was on the company website, in business magazines, on the wall in every conference room. Mr. Bradford, sir, Mark started, his voice suddenly small. Richard held up one hand and Mark's mouth snapped shut. Richard walked past him like he didn't exist. Walked past Lena like she was furniture and stopped directly in front of Hannah. His expression softened just slightly, just enough for her to see the father beneath the CEO. Are you all right? He asked, and his voice was gentle now, concerned. Hannah nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Richard studied her face, his eyes lingering on the red mark Lena's hand had left on her cheek. Then he turned to Mark and Lena, and the gentleness vanished completely. What are your names? Richard asked. Though Hannah suspected he already knew, Lena found her voice first, and to her credit, she tried to salvage the situation. She smoothed her dress, forced a smile, and extended her hand. Lena Morrison, sir, Executive Assistant to the VP of Sales. It's an honor to finally. I didn't ask for your resume. Richard interrupted. I asked for your name. Now I have it. And yours? He turned to Mark. Mark swallowed hard. His confidence from 30 seconds ago completely evaporated. Mark Collins, sir, Regional Sales Manager. I've been with the company for 5 years, consistently meeting targets. And you just watched your mistress assault my daughter. The words hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. The lobby was completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Mark's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Lena took a step back, her designer bag slipping from her shoulder. Your daughter. Mark finally managed to whisper. Richard gestured to Hannah, who stood there with her hands still pressed to her burning cheek, her pregnant belly prominent in her teal dress, her eyes filled with tears she still refused to let fall. Hannah Bradford is my daughter, Richard said, his voice carrying across the marble floor, across the shocked crowd, across every phone that was recording this moment. She's worked here for 4 years under her mother's maiden name because she wanted to build a career on her own merit. She wanted to be judged for her work, not her family. She wanted to marry someone who loved her, not my money. He paused, looking at Mark with something that might have been pity if it weren't so cold. She married you, Mr. Collins? And you repaid her loyalty by having an affair, by standing here while your mistress assaulted her, by laughing while she stood here pregnant and humiliated. So now I'm going to ask you a very simple question, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Richard took a step closer to Mark. Close enough that Mark had to tilt his head back slightly to meet his eyes. Do you have any idea what's about to happen to you? Mark couldn't breathe. The lobby walls seemed to be closing in, the marble floor tilting beneath his feet. Richard Bradford's question hung in the air like an executioner's blade, and Mark's mind was racing, scrambling, trying to understand how his life had just shattered in 30 seconds. Hannah Bradford, not Hannah Sterling. Bradford, the CEO's daughter, the billionaire's daughter, the woman he'd been married to for 4 years, was worth more than he could earn in 10 lifetimes, and he'd never known. He'd complained about bills while she quietly paid them. He'd criticized her cheap clothes while she wore them to protect his ego. He'd felt like the provider while she was the one providing everything. And he'd thrown it all away for Lena. Lena, who was currently backing away from Richard Bradford like he was a wild animal, her red lipstick smile completely gone, her face pale beneath her makeup. Mr. Bradford, sir, I didn't know. Lena started, her voice shaking. I swear I didn't know she was your daughter. If I'd known, I would never. You would never have assaulted her if you'd known she had power. Richard finished coldly. But you felt perfectly comfortable hitting her when you thought she was powerless. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. He turned to the security guard standing nearby, a young man who looked terrified to be involved in whatever this was. Call the police. I want this woman charged with assault. I have witnesses. I have camera footage. And I have a victim who's 7 months pregnant. Make sure they understand the severity. Lena's legs nearly gave out. No, please. You can't. I'll lose everything. You should have thought about that before you put your hands on my daughter. Richard's voice was ice. Then he looked at Mark and somehow his expression got even colder. As for you, Mr. Collins, you're fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. You'll receive formal termination papers within the hour along with notification that Bradford Industries is pursuing legal action for embezzlement. Mark's heart stopped. Embezzlement? I didn't steal anything. You've been taking credit for sales closed by my daughter for 18 months. Richard said sales? She referred to you from her connections, her networking, her work. You reported them as your own achievements and collected bonuses you didn't earn. That's fraud, Mr. Collins. That's theft. And we have every email, every report, every falsified document. Mark looked at Hannah desperately, searching for the woman who'd loved him, who'd forgiven him 1,000 times, who'd always given him another chance. But the woman looking back at him wasn't that person anymore. Her eyes were dry now. Clear. Done. Hannah, please. Mark begged, his voice cracking. I didn't know. I didn't know who you were. If I'd known. If you'd known I had money, you would have treated me better. Hannah's voice was quiet but sharp as broken glass. If you'd known I had power, you wouldn't have cheated. You wouldn't have laughed while she hit me. That's not what I meant. Yes, it is. Hannah stepped closer and Mark could see the red mark on her cheek where Lena had slapped her. Could see the pain in her eyes that had nothing to do with physical violence. You didn't love me, Mark. You loved feeling superior to me. And when I got pregnant, when I needed you to be strong, you found someone who made you feel big again. That's all this ever was. Lena tried to speak, her voice desperate. Hannah, I'm sorry. I have a sister. She's disabled. She needs me. Your sister will be taken care of. Richard interrupted. I'll make sure of it. But you're going to jail. 2 police officers entered the lobby, responding faster than anyone expected. But then again, when a billionaire calls, things move quickly. Richard gestured to Lena. That's the woman who assaulted my pregnant daughter. The footage is already being sent to your department. As the officers approached Lena, reading her rights, her designer bag falling to the floor, her red lipstick smeared from crying, Mark felt his own security escort arrive. 2 large men in Bradford Industries uniforms, their faces professionally blank. Mr. Collins, come with us, please. Mark looked at Hannah one last time, and something in him finally broke. I loved you, he whispered. I did love you. I felt so small next to you. Even when I didn't know who you were, I felt it like you were better than me. Hannah's hand rested on her pregnant belly. Protective final. I was never trying to be better than you, Mark. I was trying to be your partner. But you made that impossible the moment you needed me to be less so you could feel like more. The security guards took Mark's arms, not roughly, but firmly, and started walking him toward the exit. Behind him, he heard Lena sobbing as the police put her in handcuffs. He heard the whispers of coworkers, the clicks of phone cameras, the beginning of a story that would destroy both of them forever. And as the glass doors closed behind him, Mark realized he just lost everything that mattered. Not the job, not the money, but the woman who'd loved him when he was nobody, who'd chosen him over her entire world, who'd given him everything and asked for nothing but loyalty in return. He'd thrown her away, and now there was no going back. 3 weeks later, Mark stood outside the Bradford Industries headquarters in the rain. He'd been standing there for 2 hours, security turning him away every time he tried to enter, but he had nowhere else to go. His apartment was gone. Unevicted after missing 2 months' rent. His car had been repossessed. His phone service was cut off yesterday. The 47 job applications he'd sent out had all come back the same way, rejected without explanation, or worse, no response at all because the video had gone viral. 8 million views and counting. Him laughing while his pregnant wife got slapped by his mistress. The comments were brutal. Deserved, but brutal. His mother had called him once crying, saying her friends at church had seen it, asking how he could embarrass her like this. He'd hung up on her. What was he supposed to say? That he'd destroyed his own life because he was too insecure to appreciate what he had. That he'd thrown away a woman who loved him because loving him back made him feel weak instead of strong. The truth didn't make it hurt any less. A black Mercedes pulled up to the curb and Mark's heart seized in his chest. He knew that car. The back door opened and Hannah stepped out under an umbrella held by her driver. She was 8 months pregnant now, her belly round and prominent beneath an expensive cream-colored dress that probably cost more than everything Mark currently owned. She looked healthy, rested, beautiful in a way he never let himself see before, because seeing it would have meant admitting she was extraordinary, and he needed her to be ordinary to feel adequate. She walked toward him slowly, carefully, and Mark felt tears burn behind his eyes. "Hannah," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Please, I need to talk to you. I've lost everything. My job, my apartment, my car. Lena left me the day after she got arrested. She blamed me for everything. My mother won't talk to me. I have nothing left." Hannah stopped a few feet away, studying him with those clear, calm eyes that used to look at him with so much love. Now they just looked tired. "I know," she said quietly. "I know you've lost everything. I know you're sleeping in a shelter. I know you can't find work because every company in the city has seen that video." Mark dropped to his knees on the wet pavement, not caring that the rain was soaking through his only pair of pants, not caring that people were watching. "I'm sorry, God. Hannah, I'm so sorry. I was stupid. I was insecure. I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me because I couldn't handle feeling less than you. Even though you never made me feel that way, you never did. That was all in my head." Hannah's hand moved to her belly and Mark saw her wheeze slightly. The baby was kicking. His baby, his daughter that he'd never get to meet. "I know you're sorry," Hannah said, and there was no cruelty in her voice, just sadness. "I know you regret it, but Mark, sorry doesn't undo what you did. Sorry doesn't erase the moment you chose to laugh instead of protect me. Sorry doesn't change the fact that when I needed you most, you sided with the woman who hurt me." "I'll do anything," Mark begged, rain and tears mixing on his face. "I'll testify against Lena in court. I'll pay back every cent I took from the company. I'll work construction. I'll clean toilets. I'll do anything to make this right." Hannah reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. She handed it to him, and Mark opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a payment plan. 20 years of small monthly payments for the money he'd stolen. Manageable, survivable, not the crushing debt he'd expected. "My father wanted to destroy you completely," Hannah said. "Criminal charges, bankruptcy, everything. But I asked him not to, not because you deserve mercy, but because our daughter doesn't deserve a father in prison." Mark's breath caught. "Our daughter, there's another document in there," Hannah continued. "Parental rights termination. You sign it and you're free. No child support, no custody battles, no obligations. You walk away clean and you get to rebuild your life without us in it." Mark pulled out the second document, his hands trembling so hard he could barely read the words. "And if I don't sign, then we go to court, and you lose anyway, and you go to jail for embezzlement. Mark, you don't have good options here. You have bad and worse. I'm offering you bad." Mark looked at the papers, then at Hannah, then at her pregnant belly where his daughter was growing, and he realized this was it. This was the consequence of every choice he'd made. Every lie he'd believed about himself, every moment he'd chosen his ego over his family. He pulled a pen from his pocket, one of the only things he still owned, and signed his daughter away. Because at least this way, she'd have a chance at a good life, a life with a mother who was strong and successful and everything Mark had been too weak to appreciate. Hannah took the papers, folded them carefully, and put them back in her purse. "I hope you become someone better," she said softly. "I hope you learn that love isn't about feeling big. It's about making someone else feel safe." But you don't get to learn that lesson with me or with my daughter. She turned and walked back to the Mercedes. And Mark watched her go, knowing he'd just lost everything that mattered. Not the money, not the job, but the family he could have had. The love he'd thrown away, the life he'd destroyed with his own hands. As the Mercedes drove away, Mark stood there in the rain, holding a payment plan for a debt he'd spent 20 years repaying, and finally understood what he'd really lost. Not a wife, but a woman who'd loved him when he was nobody, who'd hidden her fortune to make him feel equal, who'd given him everything and asked only for loyalty in return. And he'd laughed while someone heard her. Some mistakes you can't take back. Some doors once closed never open again. Mark had learned that lesson, but he'd learned it too late. Where are you watching this from? Drop your country or city in the comments below. I love knowing where my viewers are from around the world. And if this story moved you, don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss the next powerful story. These real-life lessons deserve to be heard.